For decades, the word mafia has conjured images of shadowy figures, violent rituals, and unshakable loyalty. It's a concept romanticized in movies and demonized in headlines, yet its true origins are far more complex, intertwined with a massive wave of human migration. This isn't just a story about crime, it's a profound, often tragic chapter in American history. It's about how desperation, discrimination, and a desperate search for security inadvertently forged an empire. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, America beckoned. Millions of Italians, overwhelmingly from the impoverished South, left their ancestral villages. They dreamed of opportunity, of streets paved with gold, escaping grinding poverty, political instability, and the sheer lack of future prospects in their homeland. Between 1880 and 1920, over 4 million Italians immigrated to the United States. They arrived in bustling port cities like New York, Boston, and New Orleans, their hopes as vast as the ocean they crossed. But the reality was harsh. Far from a land of easy riches, they found themselves at the bottom of a new social hierarchy. America wasn't always welcoming. They faced intense xenophobia and discrimination. Newspaper cartoons depicted them as violent, lazy, and clannish. They were targeted with derogatory slurs in the streets, a constant reminder of their outsider status. Their language, customs, and Catholic faith were often alien and distrusted. Most settled in overcrowded, unsanitary urban tenements, forming tight-knit little Italies. They took the dirtiest, most dangerous jobs, coal mining, construction, and factory work, often for meager wages. Life was a relentless struggle against poverty, disease, and exploitation. With limited English and few connections, navigating the complex American legal and political system was nearly impossible. When they were wronged, there was often no one to turn to. Local police, largely of Irish or German descent, often viewed them with suspicion or outright contempt, offering little protection and sometimes even participating in their exploitation. This vacuum of protection and profound vulnerability became the fertile ground for a terrifying phenomenon, the Black Hand, or Mano Nera. Not a single cohesive organization, but rather a loose network of extortionists preying on their own. Immigrants, particularly those who had managed to save a little money, would receive chilling letters adorned with a black handprint, demanding money under threat of violence. Bombings, kidnappings, or murder. Imagine a small shopkeeper finally saving enough to open his bakery. He receives a note written in broken Italian demanding protection money. If he goes to the police, he risks being laughed at, dismissed, or worse, becoming a target for the extortionists for having snitched. His family, his livelihood, everything is at stake. The fear was palpable. Many paid. Those who didn't often paid a far greater price. Generations of experience in southern Italy, under oppressive foreign rulers and corrupt local officials, had instilled a deep-seated mistrust of any state power. Omerta, the code of silence, wasn't just a criminal vow, it was a societal response born of self-preservation. You handled your problems within the family, within the community. Informing on someone, especially to a government seen as hostile or indifferent, was unthinkable. It was this blend of desperation, systemic neglect, and cultural insularity that allowed rudimentary criminal networks to take root. They started offering protection, the very thing the Black Hand stole, but at a price. They resolved disputes, retrieved stolen goods, and even offered loans, becoming a perverse alternative justice system. These early families provided a twisted form of social welfare, offering a sense of belonging and security that legitimate society denied. As these networks grew, so did their ambitions, moving from petty extortion to more organized rackets like labor racketeering, gambling, and prostitution. Then came a monumental shift in American law: national prohibition. The Volstead Act, enacted in 1920, was an unwitting gift to nascent criminal organizations. Inadvertently handing them an undeniable golden key, alcohol, abruptly deemed illegal, transformed overnight into a commodity of staggering value. A multi-billion-dollar illicit industry sprang up, creating an insatiable demand for supply. Underground speakeasies proliferated, and bootlegging operations exploded in scale and sophistication, generating astronomical, unprecedented profits that flowed directly into criminal coffers. Prohibition became the incubator, transforming localized gangs into sophisticated criminal enterprises. Figures like Al Capone in Chicago, known for brutal efficiency, leveraged the alcohol trade to ruthlessly eliminate rivals, bribe officials, and turn bootlegging into an empire. This sudden influx of wealth provided the capital, the influence and the structure that allowed disparate early networks to consolidate and formalize. This sudden influx of wealth attracted intensely ambitious and utterly ruthless individuals, none more iconic than figures like Charles Lucky Luciano, the shrewd financier Meyer Lansky, and the volatile Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. They instinctively grasped that to truly capitalize on this immense windfall, the previously disparate, often warring factions of New York's sprawling underworld absolutely needed to consolidate. This audacious ambition, however, inevitably clashed head-on with the entrenched old guard, the Mustache Petes, who fiercely clung to their rigid, localized territorial control, rooted in old-world customs. The younger generation, derogatorily labelled Young Turks, viewed this adherence to tradition as a crippling impediment to progress and maximised profit. This profound ideological conflict tragically erupted into the brutal Castellammarese War, a prolonged and bloody struggle for criminal supremacy that ravaged New York's underworld from 1930 to 1931. The devastating war reached its grim culmination with the systematic assassinations of the remaining old bosses, Giuseppe "Joe the Boss" Masseria and his rival Salvatore Maranzano. Luciano, a master manipulator, meticulously orchestrated their demise, a shocking and definitive move that unequivocally signalled the old ways were irrevocably dead. This was a struggle for the very soul of organised crime, leading to a restructuring of power and the forging of a new centralised order. What transpired next was nothing short of revolutionary. Luciano, leveraging his strategic alliances with influential Jewish and Irish associates, envisioned a truly national crime syndicate, an overarching commission. This groundbreaking move effectively transformed ruthless competition among gangs into structured, profitable cooperation across the country. The commission was designed to strategically arbitrate disputes, equitably share territories, and, most crucially, prevent any recurrence of ruinous internal wars. This bold new paradigm wasn't solely about curtailing violence, it was fundamentally about rationalizing crime, treating it with the cold, calculated efficiency of a legitimate business enterprise. It emerged as the supreme governing body, a national board of directors overseeing a vast criminal empire. The 5 New York families, Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese and Lucchese, became blueprints for structures nationwide. The Mafia's consolidation wasn't confined to New York or Chicago. It rapidly spread to New Orleans, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and other major cities with significant Italian-American populations, each developing its own distinct family. With Prohibition's end looming, the Mafia didn't disappear. It diversified swiftly, demonstrating remarkable adaptability. Under the Commission's umbrella, criminal operations expanded into new revenue streams. Widespread illegal gambling, pervasive loan sharking, vast narcotics trafficking and sophisticated labor racketeering, the family model with its boss, underboss, consigliere, capos and soldiers became solidified. This strict hierarchical system, coupled with omerta, the sacred code of silence, ensured rigid internal discipline. Breaking omerta meant severe consequences, protecting the organization from law enforcement. Labor racketeering in particular offered immense power, allowing the Mafia to infiltrate legitimate unions and key industries like trucking, garment manufacturing and construction. They could extort businesses, skim profits and exert political influence. Legitimate businesses became fronts for illicit activities, and the colossal profits were meticulously laundered, transforming notorious gangsters into outwardly respectable, albeit dangerous businessmen. Bribery and corruption became indispensable tools, as police, politicians and even judges were systematically compromised, creating an impenetrable shield. This complex web of influence extended from street corners to the highest echelons of power, making effective prosecution incredibly difficult. The Mafia, now largely identified as La Cosa Nostra, or Our Thing, became an astonishingly entrenched part of the American societal landscape, operating stealthily but exerting undeniable pervasive influence. This transformative era saw the Mafia reach the absolute zenith of its power and influence from the 1930s through the 1960s, acting as a shadow government in many cities. Yet this very apex also sowed the seeds of its decline. For decades, law enforcement struggled to comprehend the true nature and scale of these organizations. Initial efforts were fragmented, and the secretive Omerta Code made infiltration and prosecution exceedingly difficult. However, the tide slowly began to turn in the latter half of the 20th century. Federal agencies, particularly the FBI, intensified their scrutiny. Public awareness grew, fueled by high-profile congressional hearings like the Kefauver Committee in the early 1950s. These hearings exposed the syndicate's chilling reach to a shocked nation, pressuring law enforcement to act more aggressively. A pivotal moment arrived in the early 1960s when Joseph Valachi, a soldier in the Genovese family, became the first made man to publicly break omerta and testify, providing unprecedented insight into their operations. Valachi's revelations, combined with the enactment of the powerful Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations (RICO Act in 1970, armed federal prosecutors with devastating tools to target entire criminal enterprises. Changing social dynamics, including decreased immigration, weakened traditional recruitment pools. High-profile convictions of major crime bosses like John Gotti in the 1980s publicly demonstrated that the Mafia was no longer untouchable. The relentless pressure from law enforcement, combined with profound internal weaknesses, gradually dismantled the sprawling empire built over decades. The image of the powerful, untouchable godfather began to fade, replaced by a more fragmented criminal landscape. The American Mafia was not merely an import from Sicily. It was a dark, complex creation forged in the crucible of the American immigrant experience. Born from the hopes and hardships of millions, it grew in the shadows of a society that failed to protect its most vulnerable. While the formidable Mafia empire has waned, its complex legacy remains woven into the fabric of American history. It represents a tragic chapter that began with the struggles of impoverished immigrants and evolved into a vast network of crime and influence. Its dramatic rise and eventual fall offer profound lessons on societal vulnerabilities and the persistent allure of illicit power. The broader narrative of Italian immigration to America is overwhelmingly one of immense cultural contribution, inspiring resilience and enduring success. Italian Americans have profoundly shaped every aspect of American life in arts, science, politics, and business. The story of the Mafia is a dark chapter, but it is a small chapter within the much larger, richer story of the Italian-American experience. This enduring narrative stands as a stark, compelling reminder of how desperation, burgeoning opportunity, and the relentless pursuit of power can irrevocably shape the underworld and, by extension, an entire nation.